What's going on, everyone? It's Justin here, and today I've got a review of the Porsche Taycan 4 Cross Turismo model. So if you've been watching the channel for a while, you might remember that about a year and a half ago, I reviewed the Porsche Taycan Turbo S. And being a car that just came out at the time, it was really cool to see the technology in their very first electric car, and just the design aspect of it, all of the screens on the inside, the amount of speed that the Turbo S model had was just absolutely insane. And just taking it around town, people had saw it for the first time and it just drew a lot of attention. And after that, we started reviewing more cars on the channel to showcase how the tech and lifestyle aspect really comes together, because personally I really like cars and it seems like you guys seem to enjoy these videos too. So one of the things that I kind of wished for in the Taycan was that it had more storage, kind of like the Panamera, which is one of my dream cars as like a daily one, and this right here is kind of the answer to that. The Cross Turismo model is kind of like a crossover, hence the name. It has a hatchback, it gives you more storage and luggage space, and it also has the front trunk as well, which you see in pretty much every fully electric car. But on top of that, it is kind of just meant for like the lifestyle of like outdoors, road trips. You can have a bike rack in the back, you can fit your golf clubs a lot more easily, because even though the Taycan is not exactly a small car, it really didn't have much storage space at all. So this was really fun to take around for a few days. It does have like the sporty aspect to it, but in Porsche's lineup of fully electric cars, there's also a few different models now, including the 4, the 4S, there's the turbo ones as well. And this is kind of like the entry level option in that kind of lineup. And it comes in at a price point that when you look at the whole lineup, it actually is very attractive in what it's able to offer. The first thing that I definitely noticed though is that this car sits very low on the road. The Taycan's platform is based off the 911, and so it has a sport first mentality, and this definitely does show that. Even though it is a crossover, it still is planted, it is fast, it is very nice to steer, and at the same time, even though you do have the hatchback, the overall kind of form factor of the car does come in at a height that I was kind of surprised by when I first went to check it out. But once you get in the inside, you realize that there is still plenty of space in terms of the headroom, the comfort in the actual cockpit, and you also have that storage. So in this video, we're going to give you guys a tour of the outside, show you guys the technology on the inside, as well as the cargo and how you're able to kind of load it up with all of your equipment and luggage and all that kind of stuff before we take it on the road and talk about the actual driving experience, and also talk about how the Taycan 4, being more of the entry level in the lineup, compares to driving the top end $200,000 model, the Turbo S, last year. If you guys want to check out the full gallery of photos that we took of this Porsche Taycan 4 Cross Turismo, just go ahead and check out vinauto.com and our column on their website. Vinauto is also the perfect place for you to go ahead and see where this car is available in your local dealership or dealerships in your area, as well as any other car that you might be looking for. Just enter the car that you're looking for on their website, and all the options that are in stock will show up right away, which is very convenient and how we found our company car. This Taycan 4 model behind me has a 0 to 60 of about 5.1 seconds and up to 469 horsepower and a top speed of 220 kilometers per hour. It has that high performance 800 volt battery and also support for fast charging technology if you have the specific charger, and it delivers the power up to 280 kilowatts per hour with the 175 kilowatt power electric motor. When it comes to the battery itself, this model has a gross battery capacity of 93.4 kilowatt hours and a net battery capacity of 83.7. And the claimed range is about 389 to 456 kilometers of driving, and it really does depend on the mode, the climate and all that, but based on the few days that I've had with it, I would say that I was able to get just under 400 kilometers of total range with a combination of highway and city driving. I would say split about 50-50, and the climate right now is about 10 to 11 degrees Celsius. So it's a little bit of a colder setting, being the fall season in Canada. And so the battery is not going to get its maximum range. And when warmer temperatures, I do expect that the range is a little bit more than that. So before we move on, I want to give a huge thanks to the sponsor of this video, Cometeer. And to be honest, this is actually something that I've seen a lot of, and I was personally very curious and excited to check it out, and we finally have the chance. They They work with some of the world's best specialty coffee roasters to source the most flavorful, unique, and delicious coffee at the very peak of its freshness. After they brew the coffee, it is immediately sealed in a nitrogen-flush container and a custom-made aluminum one that is fully recyclable, and it's shipped to you in a bed of dry ice just to be able to preserve that, and you put it in your freezer and it has an 18-month life. So from there, all you have to do if you're making a hot coffee is to take the pod out of the freezer, put it into a cup, and boil some hot water with your kettle and just pour it over, and you have a nicely concentrated cup of coffee within minutes. So that's how you make a hot cup of coffee, but I personally really liked iced coffee, and the way that works is equally as simple. Once you take your pod out and it is melted, you just go ahead and fill a cup of water and some ice cubes, and from there, just open up the pack here. And there you have it. There's a beautiful cup of iced coffee. You can go ahead and add your sweetener or anything that you would like to it. But honestly, pure as it is, it tastes really, really good. So if you guys want to go ahead and try it for yourself, Commenteer has a special offer for a limited time on your first purchase, and that is $20 off, which is the equivalent of 10 capsules. And to be honest, I had some pretty high hopes when it came to the actual coffee itself based on the unique process, and I can say the coffee really does taste good. So now it's time to give you guys a tour of the exterior, and honestly the Taycan is one of my favorite designs in any car. Even though I'm not ready to go fully electric, I've always wanted a Porsche, and I feel like this is just like a design that looks like it is of the future. And right here I have the cherry red, and I've got to say it actually does look kind of decent depending on what you like. Personally, I would like a more monochromatic, like a silver or a black, but this actually does look pretty stylish if this is the color that you're going for. The first thing you're gonna notice on the front is that you have the air curtains, and what this has is like an aerodynamic channel that pulls the air over the tire to help with the overall aerodynamics of the car to make it feel more planted and also contribute to like the turning experience. But also the four-way matrix headlights on the front are also one of my favorite features because the way they're kind of like staggered just looks very futuristic, but this car definitely does have like a very long hood. You also have the front right here, which honestly doesn't have like too much storage, but just looking at the front, I think it has like a very good combination of being seamless, but at the same time, extremely sharp. As soon as you drive this around everywhere, it just has like that presence to it. And it's just the reason why I think the front of this car is one of the best looking, but the back also has some great features as well, but we're gonna get there in a second. As you kind of move along the side here, there's actually charging on each side. So to be able to open up this port right here, just slide your hand underneath and the charging port will open. And then there you have all of your light indicator information. You just go ahead and plug it in and you're good to go. And to be able to have that close, you do the same thing as you did to open it. But as you actually move around, you'll see that the door handles are also ones that kind of pop in and recess. I would say that this style is definitely not my favorite. A lot of times you might just want to grab the door handle from the top, but in this case you do have to kind of pull it from there. But yeah, overall in terms of like a looks perspective, the slope of the car and the way it kind of just flows along the back with the channels on the front and the air curtains, I think looks really, really sharp. But I think as I mentioned in the intro, you see that it actually isn't that high. I'm obviously not tall, and I think you guys know that by now, but being a cross Turismo model, I was expecting it to be like a little bit higher or just have like a large level of cargo and be a significant difference from the Taycan model, but it actually still sits very low and has like that sporty feel to it. The back here is also another area that I always really like in the Porsche models, and especially with the new ones where the light goes all the way around the back and just has like a straight line to it, and the logo kind of embedded in here with like the kind of crystal design and the texture in there. I think they've done a really good job here, and just opening up the trunk and letting you guys see just how much storage there actually is. I would say that it's not as much as I expected, but it can definitely fit a decent amount. I would say 1 or 2 pieces of large luggage should be just fine, as well as a set of golf clubs, and it is significantly more than the amount of trunk space that you have on the Taycan. And if you're going for the Cross Turismo model, that is probably what you're going to be looking for, and I wouldn't say that the amount of cargo is astronomical. It is still like a little bit narrow on the sides, but in terms of the height and the depth that you have, I do feel like it is pretty respectable, and you can fold all of the seats in the front down around to be able to maximize the amount of cargo that you have. So I think the overall impression here though is that you still have all the great visual features of the Porsche Taycan. So if you like that, you pretty much have everything that you would expect right here. But the rear is where you have the additional cargo space, but the car itself does still sit very low, and it is pretty much the same in terms of its aerodynamics and the way it sits on the road and the way it drives around, aside from a little bit more clearance overall, and of course the space in the back. So I think generally speaking, the overall design is very much the same on the front side of the car and on the side, but in the back you obviously have more cargo, which is really handy for a lot of people out there. But they really haven't gone away from what the Taycan is supposed to be. It's a sporty car, it sits low, it's got the clean lines and like the very futuristic and sharp look to it, as well as a large front, and I really like that. So now that we're in the interior of the Cross Turismo, it is pretty much exactly the same as the Turbo S that I reviewed last year, with the addition of the passenger screen, which is one feature that I saw in initial images and I've always been curious to see. And in person, it is pretty cool because now you've got a screen that goes all the way across. You have a screen right here as well, and you also have the curved display that we've seen on all the models that goes all the way around and is completely seamless. And I think the biggest trend that I have noticed from reviewing electric cars is that interiors are moving more towards like a digital, seamless touchscreen experience. In the past, cars had a lot of buttons, and in a lot of cases, the more buttons that you had and all like little fit and finishes to go with that kind of screamed luxury. And Porsche is a company that has obviously done that as well. Buttons all along the side here. You also have like your gear shift and all that kind of stuff. And there's nothing really against that. I do like that. I think the biggest thing that I've noticed after reviewing a few more fully electric cars in the past year or so is that the future is shifting towards a digital touchscreen and kind of streamlined experience when it comes to the interiors of these cars. And this car is no different. You've got a screen that goes all the way across. You've got a curved one in the front here where you have the buttons all blended in, as well as the fully digital dash, and also a touchscreen right here. And essentially there are no buttons in this car aside from your like seat controls, your window, and all that kind of stuff. And in the past, it seemed like the more buttons that there were really did scream luxury. Porsche is a company that has done that, Mercedes obviously as well. And even though I personally did like that, I don't really have anything against having physical buttons. And in some cases, I do still prefer them. I actually really like just how simple this interior is. And if you guys watch the channel, you know that my main car is a Mercedes CLA 45 AMG, where there are quite a few buttons, and our company car, the Range Rover Velar, which is very simple and just like focused on like a few main areas. I actually do like this approach, and I've got to say the Taycan's experience is very well put together. I think my first favorite thing is just like the fit and finish and how there are these clean lines with the stitching that goes around. And in the Turbo S, we reviewed it in the red interior and it was absolutely stunning. The next thing though is the steering wheel. And I personally really like flat bottom steering, but I think how Porsche's done this is absolutely perfect. It is probably one of the best looking round steering wheels, and you could tell that they just didn't really have to overcomplicate it. You have your dials on each side, you have a few little buttons, and you do also have the drive mode as well, which I think would be even cooler if it was like a screen or something digital. But the way that things are cut out and the buttons on each side have like a bit of a pass through, and the screws and everything, I think like it looks really, really good. And as you kind of get up in price of like the turbo models and also adding the carbon fiber, you can kind of take that steering wheel design to the next level. But at the end of the day, it is still very, very simple. This main screen in the middle does control stuff like the climate, the on-off, the volume and everything, and I would have liked to have seen a few physical buttons when it comes to like volume control, but you can do that from your steering wheel. And over here you have the main display that has the car settings as well as the multimedia and just the central hub of the entire car. And in my opinion, I do feel like the icons and everything are a little bit on the bland side. There aren't any colors or animations to do with it. It is overall like a very simple tile interface, but it does get the job done. You can still easily get to all of your settings. And from the passenger side, you can control the multimedia, take a look at the map, and I do feel like it is a pretty cool addition that the passengers now have screens. We've seen this on like the Mercedes EQS 580, which was a really cool experience as well. But last but not least, I really do like this digital dash. It has some touch controls for the suspension, the off-roading, the height, and also some of the indicators for the lights as well, but it just looks fully blended with the actual digital display, and especially if you have the map option selected for the center here, the speed and car information not only shows up in the middle and also on the HUD as an option, but this whole kind of digital experience being curved and everything is probably one of my favorites in any car that I've tested out so far. From a comfort standpoint, I also feel like it's really well designed. These seats are comfortable, but at the same time, they do have like that sporty look to it. And if I had to pick my favorite color, I would say the red one is still the one that I love the most. But this combination paired with like the burgundy really does remind me of the Targa limited edition 911 that I saw on YouTube. And I actually think that color combo does have like a nice throwback to it in a car that is otherwise very technology focused and futuristic. So from a driver and passenger experience, I absolutely love it, and I don't really have anything major to complain about. There's plenty of headroom. I really like this panoramic glass sunroof that just goes from the front to back in one piece. But one complaint that I do have is that there isn't much space in the back seat. Even though this is the Cross Turismo model and it kind of sounds like a car that is made for road trips and activity, if you're a little bit taller and you need that legroom, you aren't really gonna get much of it, and it is pretty much the same amount of legroom as you would find on the standard Porsche Taycan model. So now that we're on the road with a Porsche Taycan Cross, I want to talk about the driving modes. You have the range mode, which gives you the maximum amount of range, and it limits you to a speed of 100 kilometers an hour. In some cases, if I was just like in stop and go traffic, I did have that enabled, but typically on like a day-to-day drive, the normal mode is the one that I think has the best balance of giving you that speed and the power, the direct throttle response that you get out of these electric cars. But if you want to like go for like a nice sporty drive and really make the most of it, the Sport and Sport Plus is definitely a treat. Right now I have it in the normal mode because I don't want the camera to shake too much, but you definitely do notice that in these sport modes you have a lot more character, you feel the bumps in the road, the suspension tightens up and everything, and being able to set the different heights of the car is also really nice. The mode that I typically like to go into though is individual. You can set the drive mode, the chassis, the recuperation, and also the electric sport sound. So my optimal settings are to have the drive mode in sport, but have the chassis set to the normal mode. That way it isn't too bumpy in just like a day-to-day commute, but you get that fast acceleration that the car is actually capable of. And I also really do like the electric sport sound as well, which I have enabled for you guys to kind of hear what that sounds like. I think it does add to experience, and it definitely doesn't like sound like a car engine, of course, but it sounds like what a throttle would sound like out of an electric motor. So maybe think of like a Formula E car. It kind of has like that high-pitched ramping sound. It kind of gives off the impression of like a Skytrain or like an airplane when it's taking off, and the hum is actually like a pretty pleasant experience. I think the biggest thing that I notice above all else is just how nicely this car glides on the road. It is super smooth, and just like going around town and in the highway, you don't really feel the bumps at all, but you see that the car is just like so low, you feel like you're in a sports car, but it really does just like flow, and it does feel like you're on a plane or a Skytrain, and the sound and everything just kind of goes with that. But with any Porsche, even though I haven't owned one and I really hope to one day, the biggest thing that I notice is the steering experience is where you really get that character. As you kind of corner around and make these little micro adjustments, it is just so like direct and like a very honest feel to it, but it has like the perfect amount of stiffness to it as well, even in an electric car like the Taycan. There's just very little vibrations in the car as you glide, as you make a sharp turn, and the steering just has like a good level of resistance where it feels like you really are in control. It is almost like a little bit hard to describe, but I absolutely love it. And just like gliding around, like giving it some speed here, you can really hear that. And even being a Taycan 4 model, which is kind of on the entry level of the speeds and also the battery offerings, it still has like a crazy response, and it's super fast. And after comparing to like the Turbo S, I think in like a day-to-day driving situation where you're in the city and stuff, you're not really gonna notice like a huge difference until you actually like take it out into the back roads and see how fast that 0 to 60 really is. What I also really like though is the HUD and also the digital dash. The HUD itself shows the speed limit, but you can also customize it to show you some of the track settings as well, the same way that you can on the digital dash. The digital dash has kind of three different segments. You have the left side, which you could put like the speed and also like the tire information, which you're probably not going to need in most cases. And in the middle, you can either have your speedometer, but what I would recommend is to have the map there. It really does like tie together both sides of the digital dash and make it seem very large, and it just goes very seamless with that curved and wrapped piece that goes all the way around. So I think once you go ahead and customize it, Porsche has done a really good job in the overall interface of the digital dash and the HUD system. When it comes to like the actual main screen though, I feel like Mercedes does a better job on the visual aspects, but from a simple functionality aspect, Porsche does a much better job of simplifying things. I find a lot of cars try to make too fancy of an interface, and being car companies, and especially in the early generations, it makes it very, very hard for users to kind of navigate and figure out where everything is unless you really do dig into the system. And with this right here, everything is just like right there, easy to access, very direct, and if you have a smartphone, it is pretty much the same as having the app tiles on your home screen. So I think another big question with any electric car is how is the range? And after driving this around for a few days, I would say that the range estimates that it gives you based on the mode that you're in is relatively accurate. At the start of the day, when the car was 99% charged, it gave me an estimate of about 375 kilometers. And right now it's, I believe, about 6 p.m. and I still have about 68% left. And based on the route that I've been on and driving about an hour and a half to 2 hours in the morning, a little bit in the afternoon as well, and now going on a bit of a trip, I still have about 67% of battery life, and I would say that is relatively in line with the distance that I covered if I was to go and backtrack my route. I think the range overall is pretty respectable, but most importantly, based on the estimates that I give you, I would say that it is pretty much in line with that, which is always important with an electric car, and ensuring that you have the right places to charge it and are charging it at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, what do I think of the driving experience of the Porsche Taycan Cross Turismo? And it's one of those things where like Porsche's always been one of my favorite companies. I've always wanted either a Panamera, I wanted a Macan for a little bit, but my dream car at the end of the day is a 911. I just like have always wanted one, and I can't wait till that day comes. But as soon as they announced an electric car, I was super excited to try it out, because whenever your favorite brands release something new that is really future focused, it's just something that you kind of have like an interest for right away. And whether it was the design, the technology and all that, I feel like in some ways they have nailed it, but in others there is still quite a ways to go, especially after driving like a Tesla, for example, and all the software optimization and just how the software and hardware is all tied together into a very unified experience. And if you guys saw my review of the Taycan, I felt like it was a car that had plenty of power and from a driving experience was very well focused, but outside of that, the tech didn't really have any additional features that a lot of these cars of the future are showcasing. It didn't have many self-driving capabilities. It didn't try to overcomplicate the system like the Mercedes EQS may have, with a ton of overwhelming features and just trying to be innovative. But Porsche and their approach to the electric car is one where they really did focus on the driving experience itself and ensuring it still had that character from the sports car that is translated over to a fully electric vehicle. And I think in that approach, they have absolutely nailed it. But otherwise, thank you guys for watching this review of the Porsche Taycan 4 Cross Turismo. And as always, if you guys enjoy these car videos, make sure you go ahead and drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you all in the next one.